Maybe just right off the bat, color in a little bit more about One Love Prison Project and the work that you are doing with it.
So so I started in 2018 after many years, probably 14 years of just volunteering, doing one or two meditation programs a month in prison. And maybe we'll get to how that started. But um, as you can imagine, like it meant everything to them to have that space and to have that time. It's not something they get in prison. Rarely are really, if ever, are they allowed even away from the guards or away from the noise or away from the chaos to gather. Um, and so I started that in 2018. And so now I'm in Florida and we go to five prisons on a weekly and bi-weekly basis. Our classes have grown from when I was first starting to go to three to four to now we have a couple places where we have 60 people in our in our meditation gathering. And but it's quality, not quantity, and yeah, I mean, to be real, like people have amazing experiences. Like we come together, like just in this solidarity and in this desire to connect, like deep within, to that place that place of presence, that place of being, and like it happens for people, and it's amazing too because everything it's from the deepest experiences to people just getting to rest, people just getting to think about things, to let their mind unwind. So it's really awesome too because it's a space that like people can use in whatever way that they see fit, to just sort of renew their spirit. And yeah, man, it's been incredible.
Well, we'll talk lots more about it, but first we were talking before we hit record about you live in Gainesville and you were asking me if I've been down, and I mentioned that the only time I had been down was intentionally going to see Michael Singer and his place, the Temple of the Universe. I wanted to see a talk, and for those of you who probably know who Michael Singer is, but if not, he's a really beautiful spiritual teacher. He's written kind of a couple classics of in the spiritual texts of the Untethered Soul and the Surrender Experiment. And when I said that, your face lit up. It sounded like you mentioned that being some of the start of your meditation. So that, was a question I wanted to ask you of when does meditation enter the picture for you? And please, I would love to hear some stories about Temple of the Universe too.
For sure. It's amazing when you live in Gainesville and you start to. I grew up here. I did live in South Florida a little bit for high school, but I came back here for college. And like when you live here, if you start to get into any yoga or meditation, it's not long before someone says, you got to go to the Temple of the Universe. And it's just outside of town. And so a friend of mine like turned me on to meditation. And but then also at the same time was like, you got to go to the Temple of the Universe. And so yeah, man, I started going out there. I guess I was 22. I'm 47 now. And it's such an incredible space, just like open 24/7. Like the building is just open. Like I've gone there in the middle of the day to meditate. There's actually a story one time where I didn't whatever, some things happened and I didn't have a place to live for like the night. I shouldn't say this, but I like went over there and just like chilled for like 2 hours at like 3 in the morning. And I was waiting for the sun to come up. And um so I probably shouldn't put that out there. But anyways, nah, but it's just a really special place and that offers meditation and free yoga and Mickey's talks. And yeah, like I just discovered, I also started really studying like some of the meditation masters out there. And that's kind of what took me down my path even deeper. Folks like Yogananda and Swami Muktananda and Nityananda and like that. Um, yeah, that became just like a huge part of my journey, was sort of diving into those meditation masters. And for a lot of people that don't know this, and if you read The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer, you'll realize he actually started going into prisons like a long time ago and bringing meditation. And what's interesting is when I got back to town and started going many years ago was right when he sort of stopped. And I called up and said, hey, I want to come do a meditation class. And they're like, that's perfect because he just had to stop like coming. And So it's kind of interesting the legacy, like kind of picking up where he left off and like going to the same place. And some of the same guys are still there that were there 40 years ago. People that are serving life that were in his classes 40 years ago that are still coming to our classes now.
That's so incredible. I was going to ask you that because I remember reading that book and him having a lot of impact in prisons. And what I was always fascinated about is he would talk about his teaching was not any different. It's like it wasn't like he needed to like do it differently in this way as it into this way. He was just like sharing kind of the essence of his of his teachings. And it's so cool to know that you were 22 years ago. That's probably before Untethered Soul comes out. So Michael Singer is still like, not how Michael Singer is today, or I know he goes by Mickey, but I'm just from a fanboy perspective. I'm just
Yeah.
curious of like when that book came out, like was there a big shift in like people showing up to that space, or has it just kind of been a natural unfolding?
Yeah, so here's the other interesting piece is so I would go out there. I was friends with them. I like actually went and lived at the City Yoga Ashram in Oakland for a year in the mid 2000s. That became like a big part of my path. That's actually how I started doing prison work because City Yoga has a prison project where they offer a course in to people who are in prison. It's actually a 12-year meditation course that comes every month, and it's incredible. And when I came back, actually, at some point, I started working at the Temple of the Universe. I was the office manager when like the Untethered Soul came out. And so I was like in charge of, and so yeah, there was a definite uptick in phone calls of people wanting to come. In fact, I actually remember getting the call from Harpo Productions, which was like when Oprah wanted to interview him. And that, of course, was like, it's interesting. That was that I think it was called, what is that? The Soul Sunday Soul. I can't remember the name, but it was the interview that
Yes.
he did with Oprah. And of course, that was, a huge catalyst in terms of like spreading the message and his teachings. But the thing is, man, he's always been the same guy. And to tell you an interesting story that really connects with my spirituality is I remember going to him. I remember when I was meditating, just in my journey, I would feel this as I would sit for meditation, I would feel this energy in the back of my body. And I would have emotions and I would have thoughts, but I just would feel this really strong energy like in the back of my body. And it was always so comforting. And it felt like the word I like to use is like presence or like being or whatever. And it felt like the essence, people say the self, it's hard for me to claim what things are. I don't know what they are, but I was having this experience, right? And so I just I mean, that experience has been the light of my life. But I remember going to him early on and being like, I'm having this experience. And he just was like, cool. He's like, good, hang out with it. Hang out with it. And I just remember it was like in passing. We were just like, it was like after one of the songs, and I was like, hey, he's like, hang out with it, hang out with it. And anyways, it's just one of the moments I always remember. And it's like that's sort of that's my life thing is to hang out with it.
That's a
So,
great, what a great teaching for like for so many things, right? This is what's going on in my life. I'll just hang out with it, right? Like even if it's like incredibly challenging, just
totally.
that's such an essence teaching. I love him. I love Yogananda too. Yogananda had a big influence on me, and when I read Mickey's stuff and being like, oh wow, that was his teacher in many ways is really profound. So I know this might seem I think for everyone listening, like, and I think what attracted me about, the work you're doing, and I'm going to share more, and I would love to hear kind of where I'm getting it wrong. But I guess before I ask that, it's clear. I think, and I don't know why it wouldn't be clear to some people. I'm sure it wouldn't be clear to some people of like why prison work is important, why bringing this is important. That has it's probably a little bit more obvious, and so obviously speak to that. But I'm curious, why is it important for you, right? Like, how
Mm.
does it like your personal story or journey or narrative, like what makes you almost like this is your gift that you're giving to the world is really to bring this into prisons. And so maybe just highlight a little bit more about what is pulling you to do this work in prisons.
I ask this question of myself often too. Like it just comes up where I'm like, why prison? Why meditation? It's actually a really cool, it's even a cool it's just a cool practice to constantly ask ourselves why we're doing what we're doing. You know what I
Absolutely.
mean? And like,
Whoa,
uh,
wait a second. Why am I doing this?
yeah. Um, and especially doing something like this, because I'm just sensitive to like, am I causing harm? Am I being helpful? Am I, what is this? And so it's like, why am I doing this? Why are we doing this? And I grew up, man. I grew up in the South. I grew up around a lot of racism. I had my own experiences of my family, I have my own experience of myself, being racist as a young child and like learning those things. Um, and at some point, that's like at some point, things started to shift. I did have some cool people around me in my family, but also like even just like culture, media, music, right? Hip hop was like on the scene and different things were like really enlightening me to like what was going on around me. And of course, people that I was meeting, all these people from different backgrounds, right? And started realizing all this shit that I've been hearing and that I still hear and that I see is not reality. Like that's not like that is it's racism or whatever, right? It's all of these things. And so social justice became a big part of my life even before I got into meditation. It was something I cared about, it was stuff I read about, it was things I talked about. It was in school, I majored in sociology. When I found that, I was like, oh, like I was trying all these other things. And then when I like found sociology, I was like, oh, this is what I think about and like talk about on a daily basis. And so, when so to separate that piece, so one reason like why prison, I mean, on a base level, it's like these are our people. This is our community. Like these are fathers and mothers and brothers and sons of like our people. Just because we take them and put them off in this place doesn't mean they don't exist. Like they do exist and they're here. Um, and we have access, we have so much access that we can pop in anytime and do a meditation or pop in, and not everybody does, right? But a lot of people do have this opportunity to be able to tap into this. Whereas for them, that's not that they don't have that. In fact, they often can't gather. Like I said, they cannot gather unless somebody else comes in. It's not like they can say, "Hey, can we do a meditation class on Tuesday nights?" Like just for us. That doesn't exist. Some places it does, but it often doesn't. But for me too, the reality is like I do this meditation, this spiritual work and stuff with them, but it's all from an abolitionist mindset and belief, which is what does that mean to me? It means that this system that is created is harmful, is reinforcing trauma, it is oppressive, and um, I feel a responsibility to do something about that. And yeah, I mean, I feel a responsibility to do something about that, to disrupt that in some way. And I think there's lots of different ways. People need to have, there needs to be care on beforehand so people don't end up in these situations. But then the reality is people are being policed, right? Certain people are being policed and other people are not. Certain people cause certain harms, and those harms are considered crimes, and other people do something and it's considered the opposite. Something to be um, rewarded or whatever, right? So it can't just be about like providing people with whatever to because like we have to like start to think about how we dismantle these systems, right? So how we take care of people beforehand, how we take care of people afterwards, how we get people out, actual out. That's the thing that can be hard for me sometimes. I'm like, we're just sitting here meditating. Like I think these people need to like they need to get so much more care and support. They need to be able to have a pathway out. They need to be able to be with their family. They need to stop being, exploited financially. There's so many crazy fees and things for families to stay in contact with the people. And it's all of it, right? There's all this labor, free labor that they provide for the counties and the cities and corporations and it's so twisted. And so we're sitting there and I'm like This is not enough, you know? We're just sitting here in this space. And yet at the same time, it's what we got to do. We got to like keep, I mean, in my opinion, we got to like show up in every single way that we can. And the more that we can do that, and the more of us that can do that, you know, we can all take different parts, you know, in terms of breaking these things down and building something that we really that we can really care for each other. Yeah, man.
So I heard you discuss the, I think you used the term rehabilitation. This might have been on Instagram, and how, prisons not doing that, or maybe not even supposed to do that. And my very limited understanding of what happens in a prison, maybe based on reading books like Buddhist on Death Row, or watching 13th Amendment, just these very, very little glimpses into it. And also just I've done a lot of work in mindfulness in schools, and so not a prison, but maybe a prison of some sorts, of of
Some
how they treat,
similarities for
of how
sure.
kids how are treated, that are acting out and whatnot. And often I'll just speak from what I know, which is more in schools. The way they handle kids that act out is a punitive way, right? That they get in trouble and they're punished and they're shamed, and that um, on a larger scale maybe is how we treat bad people, or people that do something that's wrong, and like we shame them, and there's a punitive aspect. And our intention with bringing mindfulness work into schools is to create a different avenue that's restorative, right? That actually, yes, obviously, things, we can't, it can't just be anarchy in schools and everyone can do what they want, but it's handling it not in a way, in a more restorative way, because having an understanding of trauma and how that impacts kids, having an understanding of all these under layers that are actually at the root cause of it. Because, like you said, putting them in a thing that's just going to aggravate their nervous system, right, is not a healing experience. Doesn't work for kids. And I'm imagining, and it just, it definitely doesn't work to throw someone who's experienced a lot of trauma into a box that it maybe begets more trauma. So I let me know if I'm off on anything that I'm saying, or if maybe you can point me in a different direction. And then I'm curious, do you see, like, what is the alternative? Like, I guess, what are the options? Like, how in your ideal world, like, where does this go, and how do we handle situations in a different way?
So you're not off base at all, man. You know, it's right. I mean, what's interesting too, I always think about this because people often want to say, well, what do we do? You know, like, well, what can we do? This is, and one thing is, I think we need to take a step back and just also just think like, do we really think that this is it? Like we've created the greatest thing ever and we're done? Like this is like like this is peak humanity right here. We've created all the greatest like systems, you know, and they're all running perfectly and we should just double down on all of them. And um no, man, we got to dream about what of how things can be. And um we're not done. You know, we're far from done, right? Like there's, you know, these systems are, you know, just as toxic and just as racist and just as patriarchal and all the things that they have been. You shared something that's interesting. A friend of mine, like who did some time, said it's like prison exists. It's like it's like when you enter prison, it's like they cut off your finger and then they put it in this box and stab it and step on it and break it. And then when you leave, you pick it up and they put it back on your hand and it's supposed to work, you know?
Mm.
And it's like that's what they do to your soul, and your body, really, in there. And so, what are the alternatives? I mean, I'll tell you what really interesting. I like to go back to this point. There are some obviously alternatives. And I'm not an expert in restorative justice. There's restorative justice. There's restorative justice is really powerful. There's somebody that I have followed. Her name is Marley Liss. She's on Instagram. Anybody can like check her out. It's like Marleeliss. But she talks about, you know, you can check out her story yourself, but she talks about she was one of the first people, if not one of the first, to use restorative justice through with an actual sexual assault case where the person like was required to do all of these things, and it was done within the justice system, but was not done with like this punitive measure. And it was extremely powerful. And there's a lot of stories out there like that. And one of the issues though with that is that people aren't people aren't all getting paid like they get paid with the prison system. You know, that's another
Mm,
thing I think people like don't realize is that the prison system does not really exist as a place to put bad people. I mean, it really does function as a money-making scheme. It's the number one funded department in Florida. Department of Corrections is the number one funded department in Florida. Um,
it's insane.
and not to mention there's so many different corporations that there's stories recently talking about even like McDonald's and all these people are like using like prison labor and stuff, which some of that stuff I didn't even quite realize, right? People think they're just like making license plates or like whatever. It's like, nah, that those days have passed. Like they're actually working for corporations for free. And so, but there are other models, right? But this is what I really want to bring home is like, is it's going to take everyone to imagine it. And you can read about it and read about restorative justice and read about transformative justice and read about what they're doing in other countries. And so there are models that exist, but I think what's more important almost is like the mindset of like we can't harm somebody into you cannot harm somebody
Mm,
into care and into love. You can't have somebody hurt somebody and then you take that person away and beat the shit out of them for 10 years. That's not real in terms of like what helps people. It's also not real what helps survivors of violence. Survivors are speaking out more and more saying, no one's taking care of us. You guys are spending all your time and all your resources to torture this person that did something to me. And I'm left here on the streets trying to pick up my life from this event that happened. So that's another thing is like shifting our perspective to taking care of survivors. And then what's interesting is a lot of the people perpetrators of violence or harm were survivors at one point who were discarded, right? Who were not taken care of as kids, who were punished as kids. And I'm always fascinated by that, how like this harm can come to a child and we can sit here and say, oh, that poor kid. But then in 4 years, after that kid has not received any support and love or resources, they do something and now they're evil. I'm like, they were just that poor kid a little bit ago, and now they're the evil. It's like we have to take a bigger perspective. And also the thing that really comes up for me that I really want us to like imagine and dream about and challenge is this idea that certain people and certain things, certain crimes are crimes while other things are dismissed. Like, if you steal a radio, you might go to prison. If you embezzle if you cut off somebody's health insurance illegally, you're good, you know? If somebody steals something from Walmart, they can go to prison. If Walmart steals from wage theft from their employees, they're fine. And so we have to start looking at like bigger picture of just like what is harm. Harm is real, but what we're policing is a very unique set of things, and it's often and like you said, and I'll just end with this, which is we know what people need. We know what root causes are. We know how poverty impacts things. We know how race impacts things. We know how all these different things, what these root causes are, and the support that people need. It's not, people know that, but it's a paradigm shift for sure in terms of like, we're going to care. We're going to have, this phrase came to me somewhere. I don't remember where, but I love it so much. And it's kind of one of the reasons why I started One Love, which was to have to an economy of care, like thinking about jobs that are based and work that is based on caring for people, that's not based on consumption and extraction and exploitation and oppression, but it's like, what if all of our work was based on caring for each other?
so profound. The question, like, is this causing harm? Because when we look at it, and this takes a kind of a consciousness shift, like you said, paradigm shift potentially of actually the actual spiritual principles of, what we do to another, we doing to ourselves. So like to think of like how the karmic imprints of that over a long time, right? Of how much harm humanity has done to other people, and how we're, in some ways maybe working through that. I don't want to get too esoteric here, but just the essence of it's and it just goes on in so many areas. It goes on in I'm thinking even of my parents, and sometimes how one treats the other, of like to continue to blame or to punish or to bring negativity into it. Not to say that we don't look at things that are challenging, but what's the cliche, like what we resist is just going to persist. So you taking that care, I love that word so much here, of how can we bring care to this situation, how can we bring love to it, because if we really look to a lot of the teachings, like love is the great healer. And obviously there's many people, many um people need to find care like that are more specific, right? Like if someone has been child molestation, like at a certain age, like obviously we need to find that care, and I definitely don't know what the answers are, but um I'm glad you're doing your part, brother, and at least raising the awareness to people in our a quote unquote industry, or people that want to do this work, because
Mm.
I want to start this podcast to really have conversations that also challenge me, around, am I doing this just for me, for my own ego, for like look at, want to be successful and whatnot, or am I really doing it for service? And I know that I got into it for service, but it can creep up on you when you start getting some notoriety or you start getting some brand. It's like, oh, look at me. And so I'm constantly getting humbled and trying to check myself here on this show, and just to bring this awareness and to really root home for I want hope people that are listening to this are doing it because they care about something, and they care about serving something other, them. Serving yourself is great, of course, like we got to make sure we're doing great, but also understanding like it coming from something greater. I don't have a question in that, but just a reflection on what you shared. I'll ask a question. You're welcome to reflect on anything I shared too, but maybe on a more just simple, for people that don't have experience in prison. You kind of
Mm.
mentioned a little bit about it with how people are free labor, and they're not getting paid, and how corporations are like exploiting different ways. But I guess if there's anything else of what most people, and maybe most, speaking to meditation teachers and wellness people, right, that do this work, what do they not understand about what goes on in prisons?
What's coming up for me when I think about that is like, I don't know, we don't understand or we don't want to look.
Hmm. Yeah,
Because it's hard to imagine that we don't really understand. You know what I mean?
that's powerful.
But um, but do we want to look? And it's it's painful, it's a really, 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 really painful place, man. You can just like imagine, it's like imagine the worst thing you could imagine, and then like it's probably worse than that. Um, And I think one of the things maybe that people don't realize too is just that how strong the human spirit. I mean, and people do realize this, but like how strong the human spirit is, it's almost like it overcomes like this thing. So it's almost like we think that the thing is not that bad because the human spirit is so strong. But that's like we all know that that's not like
Yeah.
not the case. And the reality is many, many people cannot overcome it. The statistics are staggering for people that have served time in prison, like what it does to life expectancy to even serve 5 years, what it does to, people. 100%. I saw some studies that said 100% of people come out of prison with PTSD, like, and experiencing symptoms. Like it's not, it's 100%. It's a war zone. It's a war zone in there. And uh yeah, man, it's like I can't, it's like I just I don't know. I don't know what
You
people think. That's why I think that like we do think of something, but I think we do think that maybe it's not as bad. But I also think in our hearts we probably know that it is. It's one of the many things that's hard to face. Like the reality of like the world that we live in is painful, man. Like when you just it's beautiful, but at every turn you see just harm. You see these systems in place that are just doing these things to people. And it's like, fuck, man, like what can we do? And so I guess I'll tell you this though. This is the thing that like has come up for me, and it's like people have said to me, there's certain like I have a lot of privilege. Obviously, I'm white, I'm cisgender, I'm male. I'm from the South, so I can walk into a prison and they might not even they could think I'm a good old boy or whatever. They might not even know the difference or whatever. Um, I don't throw a howdy to them or anything like that, but I walk in and but I say that because people have said to me too, is like, I can't go there. I can't go into a place like that. And I believe them. Like, there's a and some people aren't, it's not a safe place for them to go and like offer their, what they do based on whoever they are. But a lot of us can, a lot of us can show up in these dark places. And that's the thing too, is like, you know how this is like with meditation and spirituality, at some point it all becomes the same, at some point this pain and this love like all becomes the same. And it's like why do I have to like why do I have to like feel good or only be in pretty places or whatever? Because it's like that's not even real. That's just like it's just an emotion, just like um, but sitting with somebody, and like grieving with somebody and being in this terrible situation with somebody. And again, I'm only one millionth of it. I get to get in and get out and all that. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm just saying like this is the places for us to be, these are the places for us to be as much as possible. My dream is always like, I'm always like, I want, and this is what's happening this year. We'll get into a little bit, but there's been a lot of people have reached out to me the last couple of years being like, I want to do this where I'm at. And so like I'm finally getting it together to like, all right, how can I support people around the country and even around the world to like go into prisons or wherever they want to go and bring their talents. It doesn't have to be meditation, it could be music, it could be art, all those things. So I'm definitely going to be putting together some stuff and having some trainings and just getting people on board to do what they want to do. Um, I don't know where I was going. I think I was going somewhere else with that, but I'll just stop right
Yeah,
there.
well, I do want to talk about that. I think my question to you of what people don't understand, and your answer is profound, and it highlights something that I've been sitting with personally, and how my personality, conditioning, who knows what it is, tends to be. But I'm very optimistic, and I'm very like future forward thinking, and that's great. And I think I'm glad I am. I don't know if I'd rather be the other way, but I think with that, and this has shown up on a ecosystem way recently, and where I'm like, well, things can get better, right? It's like the thing we can get better, we can fix it, we can improve it, right? But just looking, grieving. That's I think where I tend to have a
Mm,
resistance to, like grieving what we know, like what already has been and what has been lost. And that could mean, again, in our world, in our ecosystem, in nature, in just the impact in this case of like actually looking at what's happened, right? From however far back this system started, whether that's slavery to modern day slavery, or however this shows up now. Um and and for me, it's I don't want to look at it. And like that is a, I'm sure, some peak thing, or have a resistance. There's a resistance, or just my nature wants to go to a different direction. And in some ways, as I think of it, like that's kind of a spiritual bypass, right? To think that, oh, we can just sing kumbaya and get better, but actually to look at the hard things, I think, I know for me, is something, a big part of my own work this year in 2024. So your response just
mm.
reflected that back to me really well. So thanks for that. Um, yeah, that was actually going to be a question. So I'd love to. I love that idea of like, how can you're doing it? Obviously, you're only one person. You're only in one area with this thing. I think I mean, virtual is okay, I guess, but I think what can be really healing is someone going in and actually
Hmm.
physically being there and taking their time. So to anyone listening to this that's like, wow, I want to get involved or I want to figure out how to do this. I'm sure you get that question all the time, like you just said. So yeah, tell me more about like how you're thinking about creating that and what that could look like.
So one of the things that I started last year was I got connected with a bunch of incredible coaches just by different circumstances, life coaches, spiritual coaches, hypnosis coaches, and I sort of just put out a call and was like, who wants to coach people? Um, it has to be online. It has to be like through email because that's the only communication they have. Sometimes they have phones, but that can be trickier to use, and there's a whole bunch of issues and stuff with that. But they have these tablets now in prison, and so they're able to do that. And what was amazing though, right, is that doesn't seem like the best way or whatever to communicate. It'd be awesome to be able to do Zooms and everything, but they try to do everything they can to limit communication and limit all of that kind of stuff. So my experience has been is that like when that's the only way, the love like shows through. And so we've been having like 60 coaches now coaching people, and it's been going on for a little over 6 months, and people are having amazing experiences. They're getting one-on-one they're like doing incredible stuff back and forth like via email. And so that's one way you get involved is like people that have experience with that and want to do something like that, and like test like if they're a coach or if or anything and they want to like reach in, and bring some love and support. But also want to even just like challenge themselves to like to do something unique, to disrupt these systems in a unique way. Um, it's really like that's really powerful. And so that's going on. I'm doing the classes inside. And then the other thing is, yeah, people can reach out to me. The website, onelovepmp.org, One Love Prison Meditation Project. I'm on Instagram on One Love Prison Meditation, but also yeah, I want what's going to happen is basically like sometime in the next few months, I'm working with a board member, Onika Mays, who actually taught mindfulness at Rikers Island for 10 years, the jail in New York City. And she's an incredible meditation and yoga teacher. And she and I are working together to put together a training for people. And it'll be like a Zoom training or whatever, virtual training just to go over lots of different things and like and just kind of help prepare people to be able to like bring what their gift in to people on the inside. So yeah, I'm hoping for like have something like in spring, but definitely just reach out, stay in touch. I'll be talking a lot about it.
Sign me up for a coach on that. I would
Yes.
love to do that, and I'm sure other people listening, please reach out. And it's such an amazing offering, and I'm genuinely excited to explore that. So count me in on that one, and then super exciting that you're creating a training and giving people more structure and how they can go about. Let's say there's someone listening that's like, I want to do this now. Like, would you say like I mean I imagine how I would go about it. I would call the prison, say, hey, this is what I do. I'm wanting to bring mindfulness into. Is there any opportunities? Have a conversation. Is that the obvious next
Yo,
step
that is
or is
exactly it. I'm so glad you're
Mhm.
bringing this up. I'm so glad that you're bringing this up because I'm like, yeah, don't wait, don't wait. Like, yeah, yes, it
Oh,
is. It's straight cold calling. If you go to like Department of Corrections or the federal, like a website, typically they have a place in there, whatever state you're in, like they'll have a place in there for volunteers. And you can kind of click on that and see what the protocol is. Sometimes you have to fill out a little online application, but you can start there. You can go to Department of Corrections website for your state, or like I said, the Federal Bureau of Prisons, I think it is. But the other thing is exactly that. I mean, that's what I've done is just cold call a place and say, look, I want to volunteer. This is what I do. How could I bring this? What could I do? And there's stories. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, we're talking about me, we're talking about all this stuff, but like the people in there are incredible, man. Like they are when you're facing that type of like darkness and like and surviving in there, man, like they're just, they're incredible artists and thinkers and philosophers and musicians and their stories are heartbreaking and incredible. And so yeah, call
This
up.
So call up, right? Just get. Sometimes we just need like, hey, just you got to get your little entrepreneurial energy going, right? I'm just got to go make it happen
Yes.
and like get the opportunity, and whether obviously volunteering and I'll talk. I want to shift into like business and marketing stuff here in a second, but I'd love you mentioned people's stories. Is there any story of someone that you've worked with? I don't know the confidentiality background or what you can share, but is there anyone specifically that that you've noticed or their growth or just someone just speaking about their stories and their gifts maybe on this podcast? Anyone come to mind?
I mean, that's the thing. Like, yeah, I mean, tons of people. And oh, what could I say? I mean, and that's the thing. Like, I don't really consider myself a teacher. Like, we're in there together. Like, we're peers, we're meditating together. I mean, these are like incredible meditators, incredible like people. Like, we're just all like doing this thing together. I mean, I guess I want to say that too. This is not like, I mean, I talked about like this is not rehabilitation. This is not like me going in here and helping these bad people or whatever. Like, that's all that kind of mindset is BS in my opinion. It's like showing up in solidarity with like fellow seekers, and like and creating a space where people can dive into themselves and share. And so that's what we're doing. But man, I mean, I'm trying to think of like who to share about. There's so many. I'm thinking about one of my dear, like one of these dear people. His name is Eduardo, and he was incarcerated for a really long time, like 20 years, and he got transferred before he was released. And I didn't really know where he ended up, and I kind of lost touch with him. He came to our class for like 10 years. It was amazing. He would come and bring a flower and candy every time to our gathering, and he would put the flower up on this little altar, and he would put the candy up there so that everybody could take a piece when they left. Like it was like prasad, like a gift at the end of our program and our gathering. And but he was released, and I kind of lost touch with him. And then somehow I can't remember how, but he wrote like this organization or something that got in touch with me, and he was living in a homeless shelter in Tallahassee, Florida. And I reconnected with him. I called him and like went and saw him. And man, I mean, he had nobody, nothing, no family, no money, no anything, was just put out on the street. And he was getting up every morning at 6 in the morning and biking to the park to do sun salutations and to do meditation and to chant. In fact, one time his PO, his parole officer, showed up and he was gone and he wasn't supposed to leave before 6 a.m., but he was at the park doing yoga meditation like when the sun rose. So he's like, you can do that. You just can't leave here before 6 o'clock or whatever. Just ridiculous stuff like that. But like, just man, and like he's gone through so many trials and tribulations, and still to this day is such a challenge, man. But he is just like, he's so full of love, man. He's so full of love and full of Shakti, and just like and his dedication to the path and to the spiritual teachings and being of service. Like, he's always just like, when he was even staying at the shelter, he would get up early and go around and clean everything up, like clean everything and pick everything up and go outside and pick up trash and like do all this stuff. People were like kind of messing with him and stuff too. Like, you're making us look bad or whatever because you're like doing all this amazing stuff.
Yeah.
But he's incredible, man. He's incredible. But it's a challenge, It's a challenge for him. But he does it like, man, with just unbelievable spirit.
Mm. Eduardo, beautiful man. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Um, on a programming, um, I guess question because it's I think helpful to just tactical like you're going in 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour. Do you do a talk? Do you open up conversation? Are you sitting in a circle or are you in front of a group? Do you meditate for 10, 20, 30 minutes? It could be all of the above maybe at different times, but I'm just curious if like someone's like, okay, I'm gonna call. I found the number. is ideas, obviously everyone, this is your art. I would say if you're having questions like that, you bring it, like that's your art of how you structure your class. But for you of like, yeah, just what's like a typical
I
class
love
look
it.
like?
I love that question, man. It's like spoken like somebody who's done some classes or something. You know what I mean? Like, but I love it because the nuts and bolts are interesting. So typically it's two. We have 2 hours. One of the things that goes on in prison, you'll like recognize this if you go or if you've done it. It's like, you know, we're meaningless to them, you know, volunteers, like whatever, just meaning like they run on their clock, they run on their time, and you know, they're not like they're not holding up stuff for like class. And when I say that, I mean they have count, usually have count like every 2 to 3 hours sometimes where they have to count the whole prison. And so there's these little windows of time where there's movement, like where they go to class, go to this, go to whatever. And so that's typically how it's done is like, and again, every place is different, but you know, like a 2 hour block. And so most of ours are like a 2 hour window. But then, you know, people can come in late, you know, it can be kind of like, you know, it's just it's like, you know, it's something it's wild because you have no control really
Sure.
of like what's gonna like how it's gonna go down. But at some point, we're all in this room. And you know, most of the time there's never any guard, you know, pretty much all the time. I think I have a couple times there's been situations where a guard is like sat in for some reason. I don't even really know why that happened, but most of the time there's no guards, but like we're just there. Um and they yeah, man. I mean, I usually I'll start, you know, we do different stuff. Like as you talked about Mickey Singer, many times I've done his course Living from a Path of Surrender, which was that 9 hour like DVD or like, you
So
know,
great.
whatever video
Yeah.
course. Yes. So I like have used that multiple times. So we've watched that for like 45 minutes, then
That's
meditate, then
awesome.
talk about it. Super awesome. So we've done like multiple like, you know, groups that have like gone through that. So again, we might watch that for 45, talk about it for 20 or 30 or whatever, and then meditate for 20 or 30, you know.
Got it.
But oftentimes like I might do a beginning little like, you know, we'll always do sort of a little centering, like coming into the room for like 5 minutes, little relaxation. You know, I'll talk. Sometimes I'll open it up to questions or comments or shares, and people will just start like talking about some stuff that's going on with them. Sometimes it can be really informal. We might even just get started on some joke and or whatever, you know. But then we'll, you know, we'll come back and we'll meditate for usually like we meditate for like 20 minutes is sort of like a usually around. I feels like we all kind of get a little bit like, you know, gets a little bit more antsy, maybe like getting up to like 30 or 40. But we have done that sometimes. But um yeah, that's pretty much it.
So great. You just the thought you something sparked in my mind of like, oh, actually, sometimes you have to think like you have to like, prepare a big talk or have all these ideas. And it's like, actually, thinking of anyone here, like creating a class, like you can actually just, someone who's, much more evolved than this than I am, like let's listen to like what they have to say for 30 minutes and then let's have a conversation about
Totally.
it. Like what a beautiful, what a beautiful idea for anyone in any class to like do a little like let's watch this together and like bring your own piece to it. I love that. So that's
Totally. And I actually love bringing like some like teachers that I love or teachers that I think they might dig. Like, and some people I don't even know, but I've just been like, I heard good things about this. So let's like try it out. And just a guided meditation from somebody else. And like it's actually always like incredible. People always have really, you know, you just get having these awesome other teachers, you know, like share their love. So we do that too.
Vinny Ferraro.
I have heard of his name. Is he like in San Francisco
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah. I know he does some work in prisons, and I did a
yes.
silent retreat with him, and
Yes.
he's like just unbelievable. He's funny, like he's great. He's great. I don't know
Yeah,
why he
yeah,
came up.
yeah,
He's come
yeah.
up on this podcast before when I've asked people. So interestingly enough, way we had this conversation is I actually saw you make a
Yeah.
comment on an Instagram post from someone I follow. It's not, it seems like maybe you have more of a connection with her, but Simone Soul. And,
Yes.
I saw what you're doing. It was like a post on like podcasts connecting with each other. And I saw you were doing, I'm like, oh man, I immediately reached out to you. So I'm excited that you just said yes and we're here. So I'm curious, marketing wise, what you've learned, to market what you're doing, if you can call it that, or to grow it in any way. I know you admitted a nonprofit, so anything, maybe I'm gonna ask like 10 questions at once, like I sometimes do,
Yes.
or anything to like, for someone that wants to start a nonprofit, like what's that process been like? What's your, advice? So marketing, business, kind of just giving a splatter of wherever you want to take it.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, when I decided to sort of like that I really wanted to just this is all I wanted to do. It was definitely a heart moment. It was like a life, life had changed drastically for me in a lot of ways. And it was just this moment of like, what do I, what I've been doing is fine, but like what do I really want to offer? Like what do I really want to do? And I knew it was this, but I tried to kind of resisted it because I was like, how am I going to do it? Like how am I going to do it and try to like make a living or whatever doing it? And I remember going to this class. I was in Atlanta at the time, living in Atlanta, and I remember going to this class they had about how to start a nonprofit. And I remember going and like listen, like being a part of this whole class, and then walking out being like, "Well, that's never gonna happen. Like that seems way too fucking difficult, or whatever." Like, and I was like, "Okay, what's next? What can I do? What else cool thing could I could I do, or what company could I work for, or whatever?" But I couldn't give it up. I couldn't give up this like gnawing feeling like that this is what I wanted to do. And it wasn't so much that I wanted to start a nonprofit. I was just like, how do I go and support them as much as possible and get resourced in order to do that, And it was inevitable that like I have to do it in this way, although I think there's probably other ways, but this was the way I chose. Well, one thing I want to say that was amazing for people is I did have some money like saved, but I like paid, I think it was like $1,000 to a company that helps people start up nonprofits. They helped me with all the paperwork. They did all the filings. And I remember when I heard about that, I was like, I will pay them whatever. Like, because I think that's like a real hard part, and a real stumbling block for people
Sure.
is like all those different things. And not everybody, but I just was like, so that was a game changer for me. I was like, okay, you do that, I'll do this other part. Now, the okay, cool. I got nonprofit, but like no, I just started. Like, who's gonna give me any
You
money?
don't just get
Like what?
donors
Yeah,
like
who's
after
gonna
that
get
they
a
just
who's
send
gonna
you
be a donor?
money, like
Yeah,
it just like
moms, and like
yeah.
um, exactly. And so that has been like obviously like just an incredible journey. But there was this feeling and I still work a different, I still work another job or whatever because I'm not able to like, even though this is full time, it's it doesn't pay full time, for me yet or whatever. But I don't know. I mean, I guess the question is, I guess the thing is, when you start a nonprofit, you have to pick a board. You have to choose a board of directors. And I think what a common thing that people do is choose people they know. And I think that's cool. Like it's good to do that. People you can work with in the beginning. But also at some point, you really have to kind of develop a working board, a board that's like invested, a board that really wants to like put in the effort to help, and so like we're in the process of that. I've added more people over time. I think we're in the process of adding some more people. I'm just gonna put that out there too. If anybody has experience with that, reach out to me. We'll probably do some sort of applications or some sort of thing to review with people. But um so that's an aspect of nonprofit, and the board sort of decides things like decides your salary, decides how the pay is going to be, decide makes sort of decisions in conjunction or whatever, but they sort of oversee. But yeah, man, I think I've really taken the stance of like I have a lot to learn when it comes to marketing. That's how I found Simone, right? Simone was this like, a marketing coach or whatever. But I loved everything that I was reading from her. And one of the things that I loved was just being authentic, not trying to put on this like, oh, now here's my fancy post, here's my like, here's my graphics, here's my whatever, but like be genuine and be real and be authentic and work on the rest. I feel like I'm in a phase now where I'm like, all right, I can clean up some things, I can make some things look a little prettier, but I've just been like trying to just share their stories, like amplify their stories, amplify what's going on, just keep showing up and doing the work, do what I got to do to be able to do that, um and then recognize like I think now it's been 5 years and we got a grant in 2000, a $20,000 grant from a Buddhist organization in 2022, which was really incredible. That was able to parlay into a couple other big donors like jumping in. I think the most we've ever received in a year is like 58,000. And then last year we were like around 26,000 like in donations. But I guess what I want to say about that, what's been really powerful for me, I think, has been like we're here. Like we've been here. We've done over 370 classes in prisons now. We've got 60 plus coaches and more coming on board. And that is just this past year has just been in a recognition of like, okay, we're here. We're not, this isn't starting. I'm not asking somebody to like help start this thing. Like we've been here and we're doing this incredible stuff. And what I want to know is I just want to amplify like that impact. When I started this, my vision was I know I'm only one person, but if I do this, other people will see this and other people will say, I want to do that, or I want to do what I want to do, that I want to play that part in creating this economy of care to create these jobs of care. And so yeah, man. So I don't know. Like I'm still learning the marketing side, but this year has been cool. I got a volunteer that's helping me a lot. We've been like strategizing on some certain things. That's been really helpful. Um, and I just applied for another grant last week. And so like I don't know, I just feel a certain level of like I mean, really, I'd say it's confidence, honestly, but it's what it is. It's just like I'm seeing how much this matters to them. They want us there. We want to be here. It's not, I think when you start something like this, I know I'm going on and on, man, but when you start something like this, I think it's so easy to make it personal. Like, I'm doing this, and what if I'm not good enough? Or what if this is not, But all of these visions that we have, they seem like they're personal, and we can almost think that they're ego driven. But deep down, they're not. They just are coming through us, you know?
Well, it's
And
like our unique
yeah,
ego is
yeah,
the one that can fulfill it in a way, right? It's like
yes,
it's yes and, right? It's like so we don't like demonize
yes.
the ego. It's like actually it's coming from another place, but our unique imprint, our unique ray can do it this thing maybe different than another person can do it. Have you, and I know we're coming at our time here, and I want to be respectful of your time, but I'm just curious because it sounds like fundraising, right? Like I'm assuming you're the number one fundraiser, you're the head of the fundraiser, but my mind goes to like, how can, how do you grow that fundraising? So I'm
Hmm.
imagining there's donors out there and it's just like moving this money to here. Um, and so it's like, I can see it I donated once by seeing a talk in San Diego. I donated to this organization called Reality Changers, and it helps kind of urban youth um, get do what they need to go to college. Like it's the essence of what their program's doing. But I remember donating it because I saw him do a talk, right? So it's like, are you developing maybe that? I don't want to call it a keynote, but it's almost like the pitch story speech that you can get on stages and open up to that. Or my other question, this my business mind goes to, is like, can
Yes.
you hire a fundraiser that has some percentage of commissions? I don't know what the logistics are with nonprofits where their job is full-time fundraising while you're in schools and developing that. So I don't know, not to make this like a coaching session, but I love talking about this stuff and get
I do
excited about it.
too. And this is like what I'm like super into like these days. And I've had a couple people come on board, like one person recently that was like, "Look, man, I've been watching this. I love this. I want to like support and like I'll do some pro bono stuff. I want to be an ambassador or whatever." And they're like, "I want to talk to some people and try to get you connected to some people to share like what you're doing." So more people like that, I often think about that like yeah, because I'm doing it, but there's only so many people I know, and there's only so many people I can, I meet, and like, um, but it's been incredible. I mean, I've gotten more and more people contributing. People have done fundraisers for us, like random people I don't even realize are following us have done like Facebook fundraisers for us. And I often think like there's so many people that like have contributed. I'm like, if each one of those people did like a $200 like fundraiser for us, like that would be a game changer. You know what I mean? So I think people just recognizing like the power that, A lot of people have. But you're on point, man. I mean, this is going to be an interesting year in terms of like a talk, a keynote, like some of that stuff's been around, been tossed around of trying to do something like that to get this message out there more. And so yeah, man. We should have some more conversations about that if you're up
Always
for
down
it.
for that. It's
Okay.
super fun for me. Um, there was one thing I wanted to say about that, but it lost my track, and maybe it'll come back. But do you have time for one more question?
Yeah.
So this is the question. Actually, I was like, oh, maybe I just don't ask it because we're at time. Because it's the question that I don't want to ask because I feel
Mhm.
uncomfortable asking it, and but I think it's important for people listening, and I want, and my intention this year was to lean in and look at the things I don't want to look at, or I don't look at, or I push to the side. So you are very vocal on Instagram around Gaza and everything that's
Mhm.
happening in the Middle East.
Mhm.
And I know for me personally, I've tended to shy away from anything political or cultural. And I have a part of me that judges that. And then I have a part of me that's like, well, it's really like genuinely, it doesn't feel authentic to me to speak on it. Like it just feels like I'd be placating to trying to look good in front of other people. And that's not a good intention to speak out of it. But then there's like, well, even if you're doing it for that, for the good reasons, it's still beneficial to like say something. And so there's this kind of comfort privilege in me that I don't. And then then I'm on Instagram and there's people roasting spiritual teachers that aren't talking about things. And just, so there's this whole kind of menage page happening. And so, to anyone else who I'm sure I'm not the only person that has maybe these thoughts or these kind of internal experiences on the back end that doesn't share about it. I'd love to hear from someone who is vocal, what
Mhm.
you might say to someone like me or another coach or meditation teacher that might be not sure how to approach not only this situation, but things that come up around this kind of the things that have happened in the past, maybe like a George Floyd or kind of these kind of social justice revolution type of moments. So I'm saying a lot, but I think you can, yeah, I'll leave it at that. I know it's probably a very long last question to ask.
That's really I first of all, I appreciate you asking that, and I appreciate you sharing like sort of your honest perspective and sort of like where you're at with that. And it's interesting like to put on my like coaching hat or whatever, not that I'm a coach, but like when I hear you say that, what you said about, I don't really know exactly what I want to say. I don't want to say anything that's like I almost am like say that, which is I don't know what to say, but I know when something's not right, you
Mm,
know, and this isn't right. Or this doesn't, this is like, this is not what I want to see, in the world. This is not the world that I want for myself and for people, for them. And it's like, but I mean, I think it's cool to add the caveat that I don't really, maybe maybe I don't know exactly where this is coming from. I don't want to like just what you said, like I like that authenticity of like what you said, saying that, and so I think that that's really real. And I think that's really powerful because there's so many people that feel that exact same way, which are, I don't want to say anything just to say something. But then at the same time, uh we need to say something. And it reminds me, I'm gonna actually go back. It reminds me of like when I remember this as like I remember wanting to buy a Black Lives Matter shirt. And this was actually after Trayvon Martin. So this was like, I don't know when this was, but I can't remember exactly what year that was, but that was for people who remember that case, that was the young
like
African American
2011 or
teen.
something. I
Yes, it
think
was a
that was
long
around.
time ago. And
Yeah.
and it was when the Matter movement sort of started, sort of after that. It was well before like George Floyd, but I remember wanting to buy a shirt. And I remember having this thought that was like, I can't buy this shirt because like black people are gonna think this is stupid that I'm wearing this shirt. Like they're gonna think that this is like that I shouldn't wear this shirt, whatever. And then I sat with that thought for a while. And I was like, where is that coming from? And I'm like, that's not coming from them. That's coming from white supremacy. That's coming from something that says you should not be an ally to that. You should not, they're going to ridicule you. They're going to make fun of you. You got to stick with our team.
Like a
You
separation
can't, yes,
inherently in
you
that.
can't
Yeah.
represent that. That wasn't coming from them. That was coming from this, what I learned growing up that you can't ally with those people, you know? You can't be an ally. You can't be an accomplice for justice because that's a betrayal. And I remember thinking about how uncomfortable I was when I first bought that shirt. And of course, what happened? I wore the shirt, and all I got was tons of people coming up to me, including tons of black people coming up to me, going, "Thank you for wearing that shirt. Like, I love your shirt. Thank you for wearing that." I remember this old man with a cane came up to me and was like, "Thank you so much for wearing that shirt." Like, and like so I say that because I think a similar thing is happening where people know what's like on their heart, but they're like, there's this discomfort because it has nothing to do with like, I mean, the Jewish people are so incredible and they've been fighting for liberation for people, including themselves, for so long. And there's so many things I learned about social justice, I learned from like Jewish people. What Israel is doing to Gaza has nothing to do with Judaism, has nothing to do with like the Jewish people. Like uh, it is imperialism. It is backed by the United States and the United States military. Um, it is hilariously enough, I talked to a lot of my, like Jewish people who have been fighting for peace for a long time for Palestine, and they're like, there's nothing more anti-Semitic than supporting what Israel is doing to the people of Palestine, um, um, which I think is a powerful statement on their part. We're being used, we're being used by these imperial powers, and so again, it goes back to the same thing. I mean, the conditions, the people of Palestine have been living in. It's like like if you could imagine, like again, the worst thing you could possibly imagine, it's been worse than that for 75 plus years, right? And and so you can say what you will about like all these different aspects of it, but the reality is you cannot harm people into love and into community. It's not, and I think we all have to be able to say that out loud in our own way, in our own time. Um, and but it's important.
Thanks for sharing all that, brother. And, all just this, I think, goes as probably one of the most important interviews I think I've had. And I'm just so excited to share your work and your wisdom. And, I think if I had to like sum up everything that's been shared is like you can't harm people into love. And so, sitting with that care and also like the care might also be getting uncomfortable, like doing things that are uncomfortable, looking at things that are uncomfortable, right? And that's something
Definitely.
that I'm going to be definitely sitting with. And so I'll put a call out to anyone listening to take Tim up on the offer of coaching, of having working with someone via email, and any ways else that you can get involved. Donate, please donate some of your funds to the work as Tim is doing. Um, Tim, if you want to share your socials and website and stuff and anywhere, anything else you want to ask of the audience, feel free.
I will say too, we're in men's prisons, women's prisons, although both of those prisons contain trans folks and non-binary folks in both of those places. So I want to just put that out there for coaching too. If anybody particularly wants to coach somebody, that's available for anyone. And so yeah, you can find me mostly on Instagram is where I'm like most active is One Love Prison Meditation. And but I'm also on Facebook as well, and then our website onelovepmp.org. um and yeah, just like come say hello and just and like you get involved, but also I'd love to just connect with people. And Lou, this has been really, I was really looking forward to this. It's a rare person to reach out like you did and to like see something, to see like what we're doing, and to just like it's just rare for I think to for someone to like to see that and to acknowledge it and to reach out to me in like such an amazing spirit that you did, and we're like, I really want to talk to you. I really want us to connect about this. And so I just want you to know it means a lot, and it means a lot to the people inside. I bring this to them, but everybody comes with me, and y'all come with me. Your care, your love like comes with me, is why we're able to like it's why we're able to do it. And so thank you so much for your spirit and your love and sharing this time.
Thanks, brother. It's been a joy. And to everyone else, we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.